Well, good morning. We're going to get started with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Councilman McAtee. He'll lead us in both endeavors this morning. Would everyone please stand?
Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come before you with the challenges that you've placed before us as stewards of Oklahoma City. We pray for those who are presenting this morning that you give them clarity, that the ideas that they have, that the problems that they have articulate solutions for will be readily recognizable by us on the council. Pray for the council that we would have receptive ears and that we would always remember to put your glory first and the needs of our people ahead of our own agendas. We thank you now in Jesus' name for this opportunity to serve you. For it's in the name we pray. Amen. Face the flag. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll call the meeting to order and then recess the council meeting and convene as the Finance Committee.
Mayor, today we have 3 presentations, and these will be the final 3 presentations. We've had 6 on previous weeks, and today we'll have Development Services, Parks and Recreation, and Airports. After this, we will, it's been introduced, but we'll present the budget for adoption next Tuesday. And with that, Bob Tiener's here.
Good morning. Development Services budget starts on page C69. Cindy Lakin's going to be running the slides for me. Carol Reed, a management specialist, put this budget together for us, so if you want to frown at somebody. The mission statement. The mission of the Development Services Department is to provide animal welfare, code enforcement, construction, permitting and inspections, licensing, and development application review services to the development community and general public so they can receive a timely development decisions and live in a clean, safe, and stable city. The Development Services has 5 lines of business: admin, animal welfare, code enforcement, subdivision zoning, and development center. Our budget summary, the proposed budget, operating budget for this year is just over $18 million. It's about a 2.61% decrease from last year's budget. Our major budget changes, we reduced 11 positions. It was across every line of business. 9 of the positions were already vacant. The other 2 have been placed in different positions in the city. So I'm going to start with code enforcement. As you're aware, code enforcement, they're responsible for the dilapidated structures, unsecured structures, the abandoned building program that you see every Tuesday. They also do high grass and weeds, junk and debris. They're doing proactive property maintenance code enforcement now and proactive yard parking enforcement.
So, Bob, it looked like we lost 2 positions in code enforcement.
That's correct.
And we talked last week when we were looking at the Leading for Results efforts, and we talked a lot about proactive code enforcement. Is that reduction in staff going to impact our ability to continue to be as proactive as we have been?
Well, there will be a percentage reduction because of the 2 positions, but we still feel that we can adequately provide that proactive service. This slide is, I want to talk a little bit about yard parking. Back in 2013, the council approved Development Services to add 5 new code enforcement officers to enhance our weekend yard parking enforcement. What we've identified is there's kind of a trend that the number of violations seem to be going down. Our inspectors are reporting that, when they respond to complaints and they go to the areas that they've worked in the past that have been problem areas, they're seeing fewer violations. And so, it's hard to say that this program is responsible for all that, but it clearly is helping. And we have some pictures here. These are properties that we've worked in the past that were violations that we had to deal with a lot, and the inspectors report that, really all over the city, there's new driveways being added to houses where we've worked them in the past. It could be change of ownership, but, I feel like, the program is actually working kind of like we wanted it to do. And, anytime they can improve a driveway in a neighborhood, that helps, because yard parking is one of those early signs to neighborhoods that's a problem. The next slide, this is the abandoned building. Through the end of April, we had council declared over 500 properties abandoned. I just show this because it's a citywide issue. Every ward has abandoned building problems, and we use the proactive code enforcement to try to head off as many of these as we can. If we can get them to take proactive action to clean up their properties and repair, then maybe they won't become abandoned. And here's the chart. I showed this last week. Our proactive inspections, they go up in the winter when the high grass and weed complaints. We don't get that many. This year we're averaging about 55% of our inspections are proactive. And, one thing I'll say here is that when we're doing proactive, we're doing it citywide. So that's, we're getting inspectors into the neighborhoods, and they don't just identify property maintenance. They identify any kind of violation that they see in the neighborhoods. So that's something that in the past we haven't really been able to do, and this is a good opportunity for us to help the neighborhoods. And this is this is kind of reported from my inspectors. The picture there on the bottom is a street in Capitol Hill. But what we're seeing is that a lot of the properties that we've been working for property maintenance have started to, paint and repair. And these two pictures, it's the whole street that, 2 years ago, it didn't look anything like this. Again, I can't take all the credit in this proactive program, but I think that it is helping. And, we do it a little different now. We used to, when we identified a property maintenance problem, we'd give the property owner a list of violations and give them 30 days, and then we'd come back, and if they'd made progress, we'd give them another extension. Now that if we give them the list and we come back and they haven't made any progress, no attempt to improve, then we'll write a citation. And that's, we hope that gets their attention. And this is just a few examples, but we're seeing this across the city. Some, where properties are being rehabilitated. This next slide, this is on 36th and North Pennsylvania. This building was built in 2005 and never occupied. And it's been a problem, a lot of homeless, a lot of police calls. It's actually right now on your abandoned building list. But in 2015, the property owner sold it to a developer. And the council about a month ago rezoned this property to allow for senior independent living. And so he's going to remodel this building and then add another building to the north. So it's just an indication that, these abandoned buildings don't always have to be torn down. They can be repurposed. And so we're excited to see what that's going to look like. Now I want to talk a little bit about Development Center. They're responsible for enforcement of our building codes and construction codes. We have construction inspection, plan review, and permits and licensing. This is our largest division. There's 80 employees in this division. They do over 120 inspections a year. And this next slide, this is one of our accomplishments I'm really pretty proud of. Back in 2013, the auditor did an audit of our construction inspection process, and he identified several issues that back then we were probably 5, 6, 7 days before you get an inspection after you turned it in. Contractors were telling me that they were turning them in just so they could get on the list, so they could, when they actually started working on them, they could get there. And so
Which was another problem, because then sometimes they weren't ready, and then we were putting inspectors out, and it just exasperated the problem.
Right. Yeah, it was really a bad situation. So the auditor's office identified several things that we could do better. They looked at our peer cities, and told us that most of them were doing them in 90% of the time they were doing them in one day. And at the time, I didn't really believe that. But, after we made a couple of calls and a visit or two, they really were. And so this year, we're tracking at 97% of our inspections in one day. And, that's really an accomplishment. And this next slide, we did take some reductions in our construction inspection section. But we're going to start a take-home vehicle program with our inspectors. We've been doing a kind of a pilot program where they come in and they dispatch from the parking garage. So they drive to the parking garage, get in their city vehicle, and then they have all their inspections on their computer. And then they dispatch from the garage, and that way they don't have to come into the office, take time there, and then come back after the day. It gets them in the field, quicker, and they can do more inspections. With this opportunity, we think we'll probably pick up 1 or 2 additional inspection per inspector a day, and that should offset any loss that we have from our reductions. And we have the ability to track the cars, so we know when they sign in, where they're at. So we're going to try it. We feel pretty good about this being a good program. This next one is our plan review, commercial plan reviews. This is the first, how long it takes us to review a plan the first time it's submitted and get it back to the developer or the engineer. Our target here is 10 working days. Right now we're at just over 7 days. And that's about a 30% improvement over our target. And, any time that we can save a developer in that process, it's good. And I think a lot of it's just we're more efficient now with our reviews. Next, I'm going to talk about animal welfare. They have over 7,000 visitors a year. You can see there, staff told me that was the biggest horse they'd ever seen, but Enos Canner makes it look short. So he did come out and did a public service announcement for us and toured the facility. But really, the shelter works because we have good partners, ASPCA, the OK Humane, Central Oklahoma Humane Society, the Bella Foundation, Wild Care. All those groups help us get animals out. We have over 130 volunteers that work with us. We have foster groups, that take animals until they're ready to be adopted. And, we really couldn't do what we're doing now without this help. And this year we're going to save over 18,000 animals either through, return the owner out to a foster or, just through adoption. And this next slide is my live exit community slide. I talked about this a little bit last week. We're projected to hit 73%, and it continues to grow. Something I want to point out here, and a lot of it's based on the support from council and the manager's office, but we got new kennels this year that, well, I guess it's really last year, but they had glass doors. We did new flooring, which basically put a sealant over the floors. And we got a new cleaning agent. And this is something one of our staff members found online, but it was a little more expensive to do, but it was a lot more effective, and it actually eliminated a step in our cleaning process. So not only did it cost us a little more money to buy initially, but it saved us time when we cleaned the cages. And so this year we'd had a decrease in disease in the shelter over 30%, which is that blip there in 14 is back when we had a problem with our cats, and they had a disease that was spreading in the community, in the shelter. So that's good things. We also have now consistent food. I forgot to mention that. They tell me that if an animal in a shelter gets the same food, a healthy diet, that also makes them stronger and helps them fight disease. Shawnee Mills gave us 2 years of food, and so that's been a really a big plus. We're adding a program to our line of business here. These program services we've always provided, but we've really never put an emphasis on them, never been able to. But now we have a staff person dedicated to this. Really what we're trying to do here is educate the public, people that own animals, and give them every opportunity to learn about managing your animals, how to care for them. And the more animals that we can keep in their homes, that saves us from taking them at the shelter, and that helps our live exit rate. And so this is we really haven't been able to track any yet, but we have some measures now. Next year I'll be able to show you some measures on how effective this program is. And lastly, I want to talk about subdivision and zoning, and this is our smallest division. And I brought this up last week. This is really the first line when developers come in and want to do a project. This staff, they explain the process, they make sure that the applications are complete, and then they identify problems that the developers might see. And I think this next slide kind of shows how effective that's been. This is our percent of rezoning decisions within the 120 days of submission. It's gone up over 10% from last year on how quickly we're able to get these through the process. And really our goal is when these cases come to you, most of the problems we hope are worked out. And so you're always going to have some, but the majority of the ones you see should be worked out. And then the last slide here is preliminary plat.
So is that 120 days from the time they submit it to the time we vote on it?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And this last one's our preliminary plats, and it's a 10% increase over last year. And it's Cindy works in that division, and there's only 8 of them, but they process over 600 cases, and they do a pretty good job at it. And with that, I'll take any questions.
As far as development is concerned, planning review, what's the overall number annually, and has that number shrunk in the last year?
The number of permits is down. The number of inspections is actually up a little bit. But I think we did 54,000 permits this last year. So it is down a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, the number of animals entering the shelter, is that number changing through the year? I understand the 73% live release rate, but how are we doing on being more responsible in our spay and neutering programs?
I didn't add that number, but I think it was around 24,000, which is down. I think 2 years ago it was 27,000. So that number is coming down too.
Okay.
And part of that program is we're going to try to keep as many of those animals, in the community instead of coming through our doors. That's kind of our goal. And
Talk about foster programs and things.
Foster, and then just teaching the owners to how to take care of your animal. And, we used to get a lot of people say, I just can't. He won't roll over. I don't want him. And, we're trying to educate them about how to manage animals.
Mayor, I think Bob's department is kind of emblematic of what's going on across the general fund departments this year in the budget. We're eliminating outside of police and fire, which we did not eliminate positions, but we froze a number of positions. We've eliminated 44 positions in the remainder of the budget. And Bob's an example of that. He lost a couple of positions in building inspections. He's lost a couple of positions in code enforcement and a position in animal welfare. And when you're making the cuts like that, we've got to give. Now, that doesn't mean that we're still not going to strive to maintain the same level of service, but an inspector here or there will be some impact at the service level as we go forward. And it's not because Bob's not doing everything he can. It's a result of trying to balance the budget as we go forward.
Well, it sounds like programs like taking the cars home so the inspectors can get in one or two more inspections a day is the kind of forward thinking, to help us deal with having to lose some positions.
Yeah. Development services is a great example of a lot of places where we've done improvements. And you take a look at in code enforcement, their improvement on plan review, their improvements on quickness of building inspections out there, and of course the excellent performance they've had in animal welfare. They've really done a good job of improving the service level across the board in all of their divisions over the last 4 or 5 years. But as we go forward, is it 5 positions, Bob, you're down? How many positions?
11.
11?
We cut 11 positions.
Okay.
It also, Jane, it seems like another example of where a really effective audit made a big difference. You know, we had that look a couple of
Absolutely.
years ago, and,
Absolutely.
you know, not taking it as criticism, but taking it as really positive way to repurpose some
I'm not
some
going to
functions.
request any additional audits.
All right. Bob, thanks.
Next up is Parks and Recreation, and Doug Cupper is here this morning.
Good morning, Council, Mayor, City Manager, Doug Cupper, Parks and Recreation Director. One of the famous quotes on NCIS is, "Never apologize, it's a sign of weakness." I'm going to apologize to you this morning because I'm recovering from a pretty significant cold. Hopefully I won't crash and burn before the event is over with. Parks and Recreation, our mission, mission of the Parks and Recreation Department is to provide parks, recreational, cultural services to the Oklahoma City residents and visitors so they can enjoy an enhanced quality of life. Our first center of business for Parks and Recreation is our administration section. Within this section is the Park Planning and Landscape Architecture Central Business Office, Marketing, Public Relations, and staff support for 6 commissions and trusts. I think one of the big things that I want to point out as it relates to the administration section is with the advent of impact fees coming online over the next 6 or 7 months and then progressively more as the next budget year progresses, our park planning section is going to be working very closely with Mr. Tiener's folks as well as everybody else in the city to make sure that we continue the success that Bob pointed out as it relates to getting plats permitted as quickly as possible. We want to be a part of that. We want to make sure that we're not a stumbling block. So we're working diligently right now on our criteriums and that sort of thing. So we're pretty happy with where we're at. We've got work to do, but impact fees will come online, and I think we'll be ready. But we want to make sure that we don't make sure that other departments, planning and development services, suffer because we hold them up. Our central business office produces over 2,400 special event permits each year, and of course, again, the trusts that we manage are the Okra and the Civic Center Foundation, the Parks and Rec, our Parks Commission, Pathways and Trails, Fish and Game. We're happy to continue that work, and we're excited about the improvements in all those areas that are going forward. And of course, our marketing staff within that organization, the admin organization, not only markets for the recreation elements, but our natural resources elements, as well as the Civic Center and Rose State. That leads us into the Civic Center Music Hall. Obviously, our biggest moneymaker is our box office, and we're taking great strides in improving our ability to generate revenues at the Civic Center by bringing our ticket sales in-house. We outsourced that for the last 20-some-odd years, and we've, with the support of the City Council allowing us to acquire a new ticketing system, we'll be able to generate the profit margins instead of another ticketing agency and another city taking the profits from that. We're happy about those circumstances. The private event revenues, where we rent our facilities out to activities, has generated $228,000. So I think we're on target to exceed our hopes as it relates to those dollars. Some of the LFR measures that we've had are the number of people buying tickets. I'll remind you, in 2014, we had Wicked here, and that ran for 3 weeks. So that got us to 249,000 ticket sales in 2014. In 2015, we had Phantom here for 2 weeks. That got us to 260,888 ticket sales. We did not get that type of program for the 15-16 season, so our numbers are forecast to be about 202,000 tickets through the performing arts venue, just because we didn't get one of those large-scale, long-running programs. Grounds management is our biggest unit of business. They're managing the grounds for approximately 159 parks. One of the highlighted measures is the percentage of mowed parks within 2 weeks. Council challenged me last year, if you remember, to try to reduce our rotations from 3-4 week rotations down to 2 week rotations. The staff took a bite of that, and I have to congratulate the grounds maintenance organization. From July to the end of the mowing season last year, we were doing all of our neighborhood parks every 2 weeks, and so far this spring we have kept up that endeavor so that we can make sure that our quality maintenance targets get hit and the citizens see an improvement in our parks so that they can get out and enjoy their parks. Again, our goal is to get people out exercising or just enjoying the green space.
I know our family has noticed a difference, so thanks.
Appreciate that. They also support 2,400, the 2,400 special event permits that the admin section issues. The park maintenance organization supports those. But we also have over 80 playgrounds that they maintain in a safe condition to make sure the children are safe in their environments when they're playing on our playgrounds. They also do the ball field and soccer field maintenance for our recreation division so that our kids that participate in our athletic programs and our adults that participate have a safe venue to play and pursue their athletic endeavors. So we're real proud of the work that the grounds maintenance folks are doing. And again, one of the uprising section within grounds maintenance is our forestry units. We react to a lot of different activities. Out in the 621 square miles, we'll get a call about a tree overhanging a stop sign at the far reaches of Canadian County. Our forestry units go out there and take care of those types of hazard abatements and things. In fact, the transit, when the bus drivers find a limb that scrapes across the top of the buses, they call us. We get out there, immediately remove it so we don't have that impediment or they have to shift lanes or anything to do their thing. So we're really responsive. But with the tree inventory that has started, that the Community Foundation has brought forward, is going to be a big addition for us in this area. Natural resources is the canal and field horticulture. Of course, we take care of all the plant material. Well, probably 75% of the plant material along our canal. We do have some partners in that area that take care of certain sections of the canal landscaping, but our staff is responsible for making sure they communicate any issues that they see as it relates to that plant material degrading or becoming deceased, so we can keep it looking good. Obviously, that group also takes care of the premier art piece, and that's the Land Rush Monument down there in the canal. And we're working right now on creating a new landscape plan, because the original plan is costing us more in time and labor and materials than it should. So we're redesigning that to make it more look like Oklahoma and be able to save some resources along those lines. Will Rogers Gardens, obviously we've had some changes out of Will Rogers. We unfortunately took out the rose gardens that were there, primarily because disease had infested them all and wiped out all of the cultures. We still have a few roses out there just because, but one of the landscape professors from OSU just visited there yesterday. We got an email from him. He says, perfect. He said, Will Rogers Gardens was perfect. So we're real excited about the work our staff has done at Will Rogers Gardens. Martin Park Nature Center, one of our premier outdoor endeavors. Again, through partnerships, we've been able to make that accessible, but our staff out there is offering programs almost every day. We've got summer camps going on out there that we never had before. Lots of activities, lots of opportunities for the children to get involved with the environment. Again, a way for them to get their nervous energies gone so that they go home and go to sleep at night, and parents have a quality of life from that perspective. And, of course, our fisheries out at fishery management out at Bluff Creek Park. We're still managing our fish culture. We were able to work out some opportunities. We're still restocking every lake and almost every pond that the Parks and Recreation Department manages. Gets a new flush of fish each year through their efforts. So we're excited about maintaining that opportunity. Recreation, health, and wellness. This is one of those pillars that you all participated in creating as your priorities. And again, we're excited about all the new activities that we've been able to bring to the citizens. Our summer guide that is out now, and if you don't have a copy, let me know and I'll bring you a hard copy, but again, it's online for all of our citizens. We have over 900 different activities listed in our summer guide for our citizens to be able to participate in some kind of activity. Whether you're 90 or you're 9, we've got a program somewhere in our system that we can get you hooked up with. Again, a lot of them are health-based, a lot of them are life-learning activities, but we're excited. The recreation staff really stepped up and have created some dynamic programs, so we're happy about what's going forward from there. Again, our aquatics, family aquatic centers are bringing in the majority of our revenues at this point in time. Our numbers did fall off in 15 because we had some weather events. If you remember, wettest season we ever had in the history of Oklahoma last year was right when we opened our family aquatic center, so our numbers did go down, but we expect them to go back up this year, and we are forecasting between 65,000 and 80,000 people participating in our family aquatic centers. And we still maintain the 3 free pools. Northeast, Woodson, and Foster, our only indoor pool at this point in time. Community partnerships, I've said this repeatedly. I think my very first day on the job, I told you how important the sustainability of partnerships is towards the sustainability of the Parks and Recreation Cultural Services Department. We have 144 community partners helping us provide either maintenance or some level of activities at our recreation facilities or our parks. We've got partners that are providing athletic leagues. We've got partners that are maintaining our medians, so we're real excited about that. This year, we were able to get 64% of our partners to respond, and those are the numbers you see up there. Approximately 153,000 volunteer hours. This does not include all the great volunteers we have at the Civic Center. That's kind of a standalone cadre of volunteers. This is just 153,000 volunteer hours out in the parks or in the recreation facilities, and it's worth about $6.7 million that the taxpayers don't necessarily have to put forward for us to have quality facilities. We're always trying to, again, with the City Council's support, leading for results, the council priority, enhanced recreation opportunities and community wellness. And you can read what we've decided what that means. And it's, it really comes down to provide convenient and attractive options for citizens in our parks and recreational facilities. How can we get more elements out there? How can we get the citizens participating in our assets that we have? And again, our summer guide was a good starting place. Staff tells me that they actually counted each element that was in that guide, and we are offering 1,250 activities this summer alone. Some of the leisure trends, just like the audit that Bob went through, we audit ourselves. We want to measure our results against other municipalities across the universe. Well, not necessarily the universe, but at least the United States. But, you know, most agencies provide one park for every 2,200 residents. Right now, we're at 3,900 residents. It's just a measuring tool. Most municipalities of 250,000 citizens or larger don't have 621 square miles to participate in. And I know it becomes a reality when we're talking about new parks. You know, you can drive 5 minutes almost for any resident in this city and be in wide open spaces. So I know it's an element that we want to measure ourselves, and it's something that myself and even Aubrey from planning has talked with organizations like the Trust for Public Lands, trying to restructure how they measure people, how they measure cities, so that they can take into consideration that we are one of the largest geographical cities in the United States, and the reality is some of those measurements are not appropriate for us. So we've been working on that with the TPL and the National Recreation and Park Association to try to minimize that disparaging appearance of that number up there. Again, leisure trends, most of the agencies that are measured at 250,000 residents or larger are providing 12.5 acres of parkland for every 1,000 residents. We're at 7.4. Again, the same argument there. We have 621 square miles. A lot of that is open space. How much do we really need to own to provide, and that sort of thing as well. Also, in a lot of larger agencies, both on the East Coast and the West Coast, the cities are responsible for their school districts, and they can take in a lot of their school campuses as legitimate parkland because they're one entity. Case in point, Boston, Massachusetts, 98% of the residents are within a half mile of a park, but they're also, the mayor there is also responsible for the school district. So it all gets wrapped into those kind of statistics. One of the strong things that we have, though, of the 250,000 cities, 90 miles for residents, we're right there. We're at 90 miles if you take into everything the city as a whole manages. The Parks and Recreation Department manages about 77 of those miles right now. We're talking some sidewalks that have been widened to accommodate the connectors on street, that sort of thing. But we're at 90 miles, so I think we should be proud that one of the indicators, and of course we have something like another 30 miles on the drawing board with maps still to come online with the Will Rogers Trail along I-44 and then the Stanley Draper Trail that's coming down the pipe. So we'll exceed that number here very shortly. Public expectations, citizens expect improved facilities and quality programs. Our results are to increase satisfaction with our programs. Our recreation staff has just recently started surveying participants exiting from their programs, and we're running well over 90% satisfaction rate with the programs that we're now offering at our rec centers and our athletic facilities and things along those lines. So we're excited about our new numbers that we're going to be able to share with you as those go forward. Is that my time limit, Doug? Overall satisfaction, we've got a lot of work to do. These are national averages, again, 250,000, but these are from the ETC Institute. So these are the people that we really rely on for our LFR measures and where we stand and things along those lines. But we're creeping up on that maintenance of local parks. I think we should be able to exceed that expectations if we can manage to maintain the 2 weeks mowing rotations. Walking, again, as the new trails come on, I know that that Dr. Shadid and I heard from residents about the delay of the I-44 corridor pathway. A lot of neighborhoods are anxious to be able to use that space, not just the bicyclists, but the local neighbors to be able to get their exercise in from their neighbors. So I think we'll be able to exceed that here very shortly. Aquatic facilities, we do have room for improvements. According to the Park and Rec plan that you all adopted in 2014, shows that we need some additional family aquatic opportunities out in our city because it's so broad. And we've taken great strides on our outdoor athletic facilities. The Wendell Wisenhunt facility is a prime example of that. We hung on to that. We're managing that. We're programming that. Citizens are very enthusiastic about the quality of that. They're wondering when we're going to do more. We did an in-house rehabilitation of ball diamonds at Wheeler Park this past year, and the quality of play is a lot higher at Wheeler than it ever has been, and we anticipate doing similar activities at Stars and Stripes very shortly to enhance the ability for us to program and use that space. So I think I'm confident that you'll see an improvement in those marks on the overall satisfaction.
On the athletic facilities, does that include the facilities that are run by partners?
We make sure that we include all of the soccer fields that North OKC operates or South Lakes operates. We also include the partners like that at Edwards that do the youth football programs.
And PCO? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Again, another national measurement that we're up against. We're right now listed as 70th of 75 largest cities in the United States. Those are our park scores up there. Again, I don't think it's highly important from a budgetary perspective, but again, it's an opportunity as a Parks and Rec professional and my staffs. We want to make sure that we're looking at our park plan, looking at our score, seeing what we can do to improve that. And just so you know, Minneapolis, St. Paul are tied for number 1 in the United States, and Charlotte, ironically, and Fresno, California are tied for 74th. So that's the spectrum that we're in. Some of our closest peers, Dallas is 40th, Tulsa is 45th, Omaha, Nebraska is 19th. I hate to point out that Wichita, Kansas is 64th. So, again, our opportunity to improve upon all of those scores is creating new service areas. We want to make sure that our neighborhoods are more attractive and have, the people are getting out of their homes and participating in activities. We want to increase the availability of parks, open space, and recreational facilities. Some of the ways that we're planning on doing that, again, the 674 new trees planted. Seems like a small number. We've got to start someplace. A lot of those are participatory from the neighborhoods. But as we get this tree inventory done, we know the quality of our canopy in our parks. We can better plan for the future. We can better plan for seeking grants and opportunities, get outside resources to help improve the quality of our urban canopy. We'll be able to tell you what the value of those trees are, both from a carbon footprint perspective as well as an economic impact. Again, the classes that we're now offering, the Civic Center is a $33 million economic impact on our community. We want to make sure that the Civic Center continues to have golden opportunities to provide for our citizens, either through nonprofit organizations that we host there or seeking additional programming for the dark nights through our own efforts. We want to continue that. And again, we want to strive to get a higher number of our citizens within a half mile of a park facility. And again, the City Council is allowing us to take that next step towards that goal by including the impact fees and the ability for the developers to get credit for creating those neighborhood parks so that we don't have to use our resources, but we can start acquiring those numbers and actually capturing those as park elements because of the half-mile circumference that we put around those new developments. So we're excited that we'll be able to improve on those numbers as well. Again, the tree inventory, I won't go through that. We'll know what the benefits of our tree canopy is and the importance to our community and the quality of life as soon as that's done. The new trails that I already mentioned, the neighborhoods along that I-44, they're all excited about being able to participate and get their exercise in. Again, it's going to help us create those new service levels, and I think the citizens will have a higher, give us a higher score going forward in the future. One of the things that we're proud of is we reopened Taylor Rec Center on the south side. The neighborhood really embraced that. We had a very successful performing arts venue on the north side of town at Northeast Optimist. A lot of children have gone through that program. Some of them have gone on to stardom on the national stage. We're going to be offering that program, similar programs down on the south side of town at Taylor Rec Center, so we're excited about that. Also, Chris Hamilton from our recreation division manager went after the homeschool kids. The EPIC program is a homeschool program, and each child gets a certain level of kind of like a punch card to acquire their extracurricular activities so they can get credit for it. They can pay for those. They can pay for a membership to a health club. They can pay for a participation in the league. We've managed to get on their radar. We've been certified by EPIC so that those kids that want to go to the Taylor or Northeast Optimist and get in that performing arts program, they can use that dollar amount to participate in our programs and get credit for it through their school system. So we're excited about that. Again, the advent of the Southern Oaks Learning and Health Facility down at Southern Oaks Park. We're continuing to work on that project, and we're excited about the opportunities that this is going to bring to our center south side residents. In fact, I found it so important that I will be addressing the National Parks and Recreation Association Congress this fall, talking about this specific opportunity. And the Education Committee embraced the idea completely for us to put this program on. Capital improvements that we've done, obviously the City Hall campus has now been brought online. It's starting to look really glorious out there. The weather is now cooperating with the type of plants that we have planted out there. And of course, Bicentennial Park, that whole venue out there is again part of our issues. We want to continue to upgrade our parks and maximize the number of citizens participating in our facilities.
Doug, it does look really glorious out there.
Thank you.
It's just such a beautiful improvement. Walking in, every day, it's just a treat to get to enjoy it. It really looks great, and the people are taking such good care of it.
The Natural Resources Division is real happy with what they're doing over there. So, again, some of the national trends, looking at cities our size or larger, their budgets, 44% of their capital money goes towards new development, 48% goes towards the, renovating existing facilities. Right now, we're a little top-heavy on renovating and a little low on the new development. So with your support going forward, we're going to try to reverse those and try to figure out how to best accommodate the needs of our citizens through public engagements. Again, Window Wizenhunt facility opening up this year. We probably have 3,000 people at Window Wizenhunt Sports Complex on every weekend day because of the activities that are out there going on. So it's really been embraced enthusiastically. Our baseball diamond is so good that we have a number of high schools ask us if they could use our stadium for their home game. So we're excited about being able to improve upon that partnership with the school district and continue providing, again, for all of our citizens. And again, the partnership with the organization that put in the trail system out at Martin Park. I'm having a senior moment right now. Wilderness Matters, thank you. And, of course, Integris. Couldn't have done it without the Integris system participating as well. But the number of people using Martin Park has escalated quite high. Even when the Nature Center is not open, we get a lot of participants walking and enjoying the wildlife. And believe it or not, the wildlife have not suffered because we're now open 7 days a week and not 5. So. Again, Memorial Park coming online and being opened, it just is a refreshing situation to go up classing or down classing and being able to look over at that green space. I get quite a bit of enjoyment every time I drive by that park, and I love just to walk through, especially on weekends when it's so being heavily used by the citizens, let alone the enjoyment that the Boys and Girls Club is having with having that as their backyard. And of course, one of the things that's coming on that we're kind of proud of at this point in time, we will be taking bids soon on Military Park. Again, it's one of those iconic pieces right there on the edge of Route 66. Everybody can see with the milk bottle in the background. Again, the partnership with the Vietnamese community and creating an opportunity for them to commemorate all the efforts that the United States did in trying to keep Vietnam free and democratic, I think will be a great addition on that corridor. One of the things that I told you that I wanted to try to do is become a little more self-sustaining. When I first stood before you back in 2014. I think this shows that we are working towards those ends. Our revenues in 2014 was a little over $630,000. Right now, and this is for a 10-month period, we're at $846,000. So we've been able to go up a pretty good level, but at the same time, we're still providing a lot of free programs, a lot of no-cost programs for our children. We're also finding partners to help them help everybody participate in our program. So even if it's a fee-based program like swim lessons, we're finding partners to give us scholarship dollars so we can offer free swim lessons in those areas of town that needs it the most. So again, we're not going to price ourselves out of business. We're not going to become one of those elite ranked facilities. We want to make sure we're providing for everybody. So the more that we create, the more we're trying to find those partners to help us make sure that we are sustainable and we can offer the scholarships. Just again, national trends. Most cities of our size or larger are generating about $9 per capita. We're at $1.91. Again, agencies of our size recovered 29%. We're at 4.9. So we have room to grow, and again, through public engagements and talking with our neighborhoods, seeing what they need, what they want, again, finding those partners to help us, I think we can inch our way up, again, providing some revenues for the general fund. The crux of the matter today is our proposed budget is $33,002,000. We're about 5.5% below where we were last year. We have reduced our staffing levels a total of 7 positions. All of those positions were vacant. We didn't have to put anybody out on the street, so we're real happy about that. But our real operating budget is $26,773. Some of the other dollars are the non-operating budget dollars of $5 million. That mostly is our partnership We take a partnership dollars in that goes into that non-operating budget, so we have the authority to re-spend that money for those scholarships. It's also our oil and gas revenues, so that we have the opportunity if a project goes over budget or the bids are higher than what we anticipated, we can cover some of those shortfalls through our oil and gas funds. We actually deleted 12 vacant positions, but through last year's budget process, we created some new positions, with your permission, and to make those, trying to figure out the best way to say it, we had to make those positions whole. So we took vacant positions to fund those new positions that were approved basically last year. We're deleting 620,000 line items from our budget. We'll buy a few less chemicals and that sort of thing. I think we'll manage the system pretty well. And of course, one of the things that balances out those 12 vacant positions was as MAPS 1, the funding goes away, those positions in the canal area that were funded from MAPS 1 money have to be either eliminated or rotated over to the general fund budget, and that's what we've done. We've rotated a nursery worker that works in the canal area from MAPS 1 funding to general fund funding. Be happy to answer any questions.
You mentioned capital improvements at Stars and Stripes, specifically with regards to the ballpark facilities. Can you explain that, when it will occur, what's going to be done?
Most of the work will be started very soon and work through the fall, so we can hopefully get the new grass down on those fields so they have a time to grow in this season so that we can start playing ball next spring.
Anybody else? Larry?
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned that you're going out and talking to people and listening to the needs of our citizens. It's time for a commercial, I think. Thank you for your staff willingness to come out to the southwest area of Oklahoma City next Tuesday night for a presentation and a listening session with the neighbors out there as far as what their future park desires are. So if you live in southwest part of Oklahoma City, please come out to the Good Shepherd Church, 7 o'clock on the 14th, to interact with Doug and his people. And thank you for your willingness to do that, sir.
Not a problem.
Ed?
I want to echo what Larry's saying. I'm so grateful for your commitment to public engagement. It's something, I appreciate your enthusiasm. It's something you can't fake. You did what Larry's talking about for James and I in Ward 1 and 2 is a great meeting. I'm just really grateful for your commitment to it. You mentioned Military Park. We had a meeting there. There was a contingent there that already had their mind up, wanted it presented, and you refused the whole meeting because you wanted the public, the neighborhoods, to put in before you presented a final, and I'm so grateful for that. In terms of this presentation, 2 years ago, I forgot the name of the consulting firm, but we had a holistic study of the situation of parks in Oklahoma City. And you mentioned a lot of peer comparisons. It seems like the greatest outlier status that we had in that study was spending per capita and maintenance and programming spending. And that, when you showed that we were 70th out of 74th, that organization, the lowest score we got was spending per capita. You've got the GEO bond, you've got impact fees, whatever maps. I mean, all those are for capital dollars, right? Impact fees you can't spend for operations.
Maintenance,
right?
no.
So how do you ever close that gap? You're spending another 5.5% this year. You're bringing an 80-acre park online downtown, which will require maintenance dollars that I don't see that we have. And so how, without some kind of new revenue source or a dedicated funding source, are you ever going to close that gap?
Well, that's a never-ending question for all Parks and Rec professionals across the country is how do you maintain it? I think one of the big things that we need to work through, especially through these public engagements, is providing regional facilities that could possibly reduce smaller facilities, satellite facilities, put in a larger rec center and then closing 2 or 3 other rec centers and moving the staff there so you don't have a huge increase in your overhead for those type of facilities. The utilities can be moved there and the whole 9 yards. The other thing, again, as I said, we can't do it without sustainable partnerships, and I think that's a big piece of it. Case in point is the way we're approaching the MAPS senior health and wellness facilities, getting partners to step up and taking on the recurring cost of those facilities. I think that's one of the Parks and Rec professionals cut their teeth on that type of activity back in the 80s, and especially in this corridor that we're in. When the last oil bust came, we learned how to find those partners and try to get them to carry the weight of the recurring costs.
But do any of our peer cities have a dedicated funding source, like we have a 1/8 cent sales tax for the zoo, for example?
Yes, there are quite a few cities that have, and the closest one that I can think of is down in the Metroplex of Dallas. Trying to remember the name of the city, but they have a 1/2 cent sales tax specifically for parks and recreation.
Yeah, when you look at the comparison from city to city, you really do have to delve into the details of how the data is collected. For instance, in some cities that oversee the schools, they count all the school playgrounds as parkland. Well, we have like 200 schools. Some of them are available to our citizenry, some of them are not. But a city like Chicago counts every playground because their parks department provides, maintenance for all of those grounds. You can imagine how those numbers get skewed. We have the state fairgrounds, which is actually a city park, but we have a nonprofit entity that provides the management and upkeep of that facility. So that doesn't show up in these numbers. The Boathouse Foundation is, again, city-owned property with tremendous capital investment by the city, but it doesn't show up on these numbers because the Boathouse Foundation runs it. And perhaps the biggest example is the zoo. The zoo has a $20 million budget, $14 million from that eighth of a penny that Ed referenced. When you count ticket sales, I'm guessing 20 million or so is in that budget. In some cities, their parks department's involved in the operations of their zoo, and so that skews their numbers accordingly. I've even seen studies that when they look at recreation areas in a city, they count the reservoirs. Not just the area around it, but the water itself. You can imagine if you count our reservoir land, suddenly our park numbers look a lot different. And so there's a number of organizations that try to compare cities, and I've never looked at one that I said, this is apples to apples. Because cities report data in different manners because they have different responsibilities. So it really is difficult to try and put all that together and to have some sort of number that you can compare with some sort of confidence.
You're exactly right, Mayor, and that's one of the things, as I said, Aubrey Hamilton and myself have been talking to these national organizations and trying to figure out how the best way to get our numbers reevaluated. But some of those assets that haven't been counted in the past, we're now counting. So the new numbers should start to see that. The zoo land is incorporated in Lincoln. We count all of Lincoln now and make sure that it's, the Softball Hall of Fame, the zoo, the museums, the
golf
that are out
courses.
there, the golf courses. So we're now looking at, we're one of those cities that are now claiming the reservoirs because we provide recreational opportunities through fishing, boating, and other activities on our reservoirs. So we're actually, in fact, starting to claim 22,000 acres instead of only the 5,800 that are hardcore parkland. So we're trying to close the gap on that, legitimately closing the gap on that because we are providing recreational opportunities on a wide variety of real estate that may not be specifically park but are available for recreational opportunities. So we are trying to close some of those gaps.
Yeah. Okay. Doug, we're proud of it, and I think our citizen satisfaction ratings, kind of reflect that the citizens of Oklahoma City are very proud of the improvements we made. Keep in mind, we went 20 years, mid-70s to the mid-90s, without passing a bond issue for parks. And I think we've caught up, but, if we had 2 or 3 bond issues in there, the Parks Department would look different today.
I think so.
You just can't go 20 years and not invest in your parks. And fortunately, we're 20 years beyond that and doing a lot of really nice things. Thanks.
I think that explains why 95% of the money that we're spending is renovating rather than new. So, that totally made sense to me when you showed that slide.
I would, before I leave the podium, I'd like to have my senior staff stand and be recognized. Thank you, guys, for helping participate. Thank you.
And next up is the airport operations with Mark Brandenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. While Karen's getting set up, I do want to take an opportunity to introduce a couple of my staff. Kim Sotomayor is the airport's business manager and does a great job overseeing all of the accounting and finance operations for the airports department. And you all know Karen Carney, who will help me with the presentation today. Karen does a fabulous job with public information and marketing, and she also manages our air service development program as well as the advertising contract for the terminal. The airports department budget you can find on page C5 in the budget book. To reiterate, our mission is to provide for the operations, management, and development of the city's airports to our tenants, users, and the general public so that they can have a safe and efficient air transportation system. We operate 3 airports for the benefit of the City of Oklahoma City and the Oklahoma City Airport Trust. Will Rogers World Airport is our commercial service airport, and last year we had over 3.7 million passengers pass through the airport. We also provide facilities for general aviation users and businesses at Wiley Post and Clarence E. Page Airport. We manage a large capital improvement program for the maintenance of construction of buildings and infrastructure, and we also have now 500 leases, contracts, and agreements that we manage. So we're quite the landlord to our tenants, and this has had about a 25% increase over the last few years, which has put some strain on staff with workload. Before getting into the airport's issues and performance indicators, I would like to give you a brief overview of the airport trust budget that was approved last week. These represent the main sources of fund categories for the airports department and the trust. We have building rents, which is comprised of lease payments for buildings and hangars that are owned by the trust. We have landing fees, which are a calculated rate per 1,000 pounds of landed weight. This is charged to passenger carriers and freight carriers. We also have parking revenues, which are related to our public parking operation for our various parking garages and surface lots. Concession revenues are gross receipts that we see from the food and beverage, retail, and also rental car company concessions. And we also have fuel cell revenues, which are comprised of a calculated rate per gallon of all fuel that is either retailed on the airport or received from those lease operators who have self-fueling privileges. We also have other airport charges as well, which is comprised of maintenance reimbursements, apron fees, and ground rentals, and these are components which are in leases. So we have the total airport charges to our tenants and users of $52,080,000. We have other sources of revenues as well. We have oil and gas revenues that we receive, and we usually use these funds as sponsor match funds for the grants that we get with the Federal Aviation Administration. We're still receiving interest on investments, although yields are quite low. Our passenger facility charges are revenues that are used to supplement our airport capital improvement program. They're expressly used for those projects eligible for the movement of baggage and passengers. And PFCs are also used to pay off debt financing for those eligible projects. We have customer facility charge revenues, and this is the charge that is used to pay for the new rental car center that was recently constructed. It also purchased the 8 buses that we use to transport passengers to and from the terminal, and it pays for the overall rental car program. And then we have other federal and state participation. This is usually in the form of grants from the Federal Aviation Administration or the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission for eligible projects, mainly dealing with airfield projects on our 3 airports. So total other revenue is $19,232,000. We also have carryover, which is the Mike Monroney Aeronautical Escrow account that we use for maintenance and capital projects for the Airport Trust responsibilities to maintain certain infrastructure and buildings at Mike Monroney. It also includes prior year revenues to help us in our capital program. And then revenue bond proceeds are those bond proceeds that we're intending to use on construction next year. So the total of the carryover revenue bond proceeds and the total revenue projected of $71,312,000 comprises the budget of a total of $116,708,000. In looking to the department's operating expenses and uses of funds, we have other services and fees. This is the category where we have our major contracts, such as our parking management contract, our aircraft rescue and firefighting, janitorial, and supplemental security contract. We have commodities, which is various services and supplies, debt requirements that comes mainly from the prior financing of projects such as the last terminal renovation, the most recent parking garage that was constructed, as well as the new rental car center. And then the transfer to the airport's cash fund, this is the department operating account. So total operating expenditures is projected to be $43,655,000. We also have reserves, which are funds estimated to occur next year that we'll be using on future capital. And then we have a significant capital outlay projected next year of $68,301,000, and that's to balance the budget. I want to bring to your attention a few of the completed projects that highlight the airport's department's strategic measures to improve our infrastructure and environment for the traveling public. On March the 2nd, we opened the new consolidated rental car facility. This consolidates all of the rental car operations into one facility. We have 9 companies operating now this facility, and they all seem to be very happy with it. I will tell you that this facility cost about $36.6 million. That's including the 8 buses that we purchased. And in the month of May, we transported 70,000 people between the terminal and the new facility. So business is brisk, and I will say that business is up more. I think it's about 7% more from when we designed the facility back in 2009. We also completed the airport's checked baggage inspection system. This was a $16.6 million project. This new baggage system replaced the baggage system that was installed after 9/11, and the new system provides both better efficiency and enhanced bag tracking and screening. We completed a new terminal generator project. This is significant because before we just had code backup power. Now we're able to be 100% self-sufficient in the event of a power outage, commercial power failure. This is vital so that we continue to process passengers. The ticket counters will continue to operate, and all of the airport major systems will continue to operate. We're also substantially complete with taxiway C and G. Taxiway C and G are 2 of the 3 taxiways that all the air carriers transition to and from the airfield and the terminal. This was previously asphalt pavement, and we've converted it to concrete. This was a $8.4 million project. And then we have Wiley Post Airport, where we're doing a lot of improvements. We completed Phase 1, which is a joint seal project for runway 17 right and 35 left, which is the west parallel runway. And we also did some significant airfield signage, lighting, and other pavement improvements, and a lot of electrical work. So now I'd like to get into the department's issues and some of our performance indicators. The first issue relates to areas that really impact a lot of resources for funding airport operations and capital. The nature of the airline industry is that revenue sometimes can be very volatile depending on what's going on with regard to activity. For instance, the number of air carrier operations and the number of passengers can affect various revenue categories. From a single passenger, we can receive revenue from parking revenue, concession revenue, and a passenger facility charge. And I have a couple of examples that show the volatility of the revenue. We also have increases in cost of providing services. A few examples would be supplemental security, our janitorial contract, as well as jet bridge maintenance. Our strategy is to increase and stabilize airport revenue. Here's a good slide that I want to spend a minute on just to talk about one of our measures that tracks the percentage change in food and beverage and retail growth. Our goal on this is 2% a year. Just point out in fiscal year 11 and 12, to start on the left side of the graph, that's actually a few years ago when Parodies, the retail concessionaire, closed many of their stores to do some remodeling. and you see the benefits of that in FY12 and 13 when those stores reopened. And then the food and beverage provider, Delaware North Concessions, introduced the new concession, Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. You can see the following year we had still a good bump in our revenues concessions. In FY14 and 15, the lounge, you may remember, was closed as Delaware North renovated that, and now we have the new Cross Greens Brewery, and that's what we're seeing the benefits of in fiscal year 15 and 16. We also track the change in parking revenue per transaction, and this again is a volatility issue for us at the airport. I point out in FY12 and 13 we have a major bump in revenue transactions because the off-airport operator was impacted severely by one of the tornadoes that went through that year. The next 2 years we still saw some parkers we believe that we were able to retain. I think they liked parking at the airport, the proximity of parking and getting into the pedestrian tunnel, so we were able to keep some of those parkers on airport. And then we have a 1% growth so far in FY15 and 16, and that's mainly because some of our garages have undergone some maintenance. Our second issue relates to factors that we have to react to effectively. If we don't, it can impact staffing, workload, funding, and also long-term planning. I've already mentioned how air carrier operations and air carrier activity can affect resources, but we also have fluctuations in the aviation industry. I've always said so goes the economy, so goes general aviation. There's a direct correlation to the number of operations at the airports, at Wiley Post in particular, and how the economy is doing. And then we also have our development initiatives on the east side of the airport as we try to get ready ourselves for development with the improvements of Taxiway H and the realignment of Portland Avenue, and the Airport Trust is now constructing the north phase of Portland Avenue. And we also have environmental and security requirements, and often these come in the form of unfunded mandates, and we've been dealing a lot with TSA issues. Our strategy is to improve the airport environment for our travelers and tenants through long-term infrastructure and improvements. One of the measures that we have in this issue is in the commercial line of business, we track the percentage of airport certification work orders that are complete within 3 days. A certification work order is really derived from the FAA annual inspection we get, where we are inspected in 13 major categories, and we have to pass that inspection each year in order for air carriers to continue to operate out of Will Rogers. Our operations staff subsequently inspects ourselves on those 13 areas and then notify maintenance, and we're doing pretty well with a target of 90%, and we have 96%. Sometimes weather can prevent us from getting out on the airfield to take care of those. We also track the percentage of days with zero security incidents. Our target is 97%. We're a little bit shy of that at 94%. We have hundreds of people that have access to sterile and secure areas, and many times we'll have tenants or users fail to secure doors or baggage doors or airfield gates. In the general aviation line of business, we track the percentage of itinerant takeoffs and landings at Wiley Post. The target is 70%. We're not quite there at 68%. I think it's because we had our runway closed down for some period of time, and that'll continue to be the case for the next couple of years. But just an itinerant takeoff is basically an out-of-town operation, landing and takeoff. It's not locally based. That's amazing to have a 70% target. We looked at this track for several years before the manager wanted to put this in the LFR program, because when you have 70% of your traffic itinerant, that means commerce is being transacted in your city. Most of this is business aviation. We also track the percentage of days the airport has a runway closed. We track this at general aviation and the commercial airport, and we're at 8% on the target. We're much higher than that. Again, we will bust this target the next couple of years as we do projects mainly at Wiley Post Airport. In the property management and development line of business, one of the measures I'm really proud of is the percentage of project cost as a result of change orders and amendments. Our goal is no more than 5% a year, and you can see over the years we're historically below that. So staff's doing a great job managing the projects. I want to talk about an example of a project that's upcoming to, again, highlight our commitment to improve the airport environment. Talk about the terminal expansion project a little bit. It was very apparent when we went into design that what we needed to do, and I mentioned this before a few months ago when I brought to you this project, was we had several barriers that we had to eliminate. Primarily, we have to demolish the cargo building, which is on the east end of the terminal building, And then we have several utilities that we need to relocate and realign. 2 of those are with private telecom communication companies, and we have some water and wastewater improvements that we'll be making on the terminal ramp. To talk about the terminal project itself, the larger project, it's still a budget of estimated to be $74.8 million. The staff is just getting through 60% design on this. To remind you, the purpose of this is to increase gate capacity. It's also to dramatically improve passenger processing with our security checkpoints, taking all of our checkpoints and going to a central security checkpoint, and we'll be converting our existing checkpoints into meter greeter lobbies, and we'll be also increasing some airport functionality with airport operations and police. We do have some milestones that we do have to achieve on this project that are a little bit out of our control. We're hoping that this project can be complete in 2019, but we do have a passenger facility charge application we have to get approved with the FAA, and we're unsure of the timeline of that, but we're working on that application as we speak. I want to talk about air service, which is our third issue. We've done a really good job, I think, over the last few years of attracting air service to Oklahoma City. We know that the 20-year growth in population and business is going to result in an increased demand, and we want to continue our efforts to attract air service in Oklahoma City. In fact, Karen is going next week to an air service conference where she'll be meeting with several carriers. Air service is important because it affects economic development, tourism, and the convention business. This is just a slide I want to give you some historical on our boarding passenger and enplanement numbers over the last few years. Our estimated for FY16 is going to be a little over 1.8 million passengers. Of course, you double that with the deplaning passengers for a total going through the airport. And because of the economy and because probably a little bit of the energy sector climate, we're probably projecting for flat for anticipated next year. With low gas prices, there may be some people that are actually, driving rather than flying to some of those destinations. Historically, we have about a 1.6% increase in the last 10 years of our enplanements, and we hope that will continue. One of the things that we track, which is important to us and the airlines, is our cost per enplane passenger. This is a measure to show the airlines that we're really a low-cost airport to operate out of. We try to, as a goal, not increase our cost per enplane passenger to the airlines no more than 5%. And you can see that we're doing really, really well. The numbers in green are our target, or are our actual numbers over the last few years. You can see in FY14, our cost per enplane passenger was $5.84. Next year, as a result of the new methodology in the airline agreement, it's actually going to drop down to $5.53. And this is important because if you look at all the small hub medians, and Will Rogers is the largest small hub airport in the FAA category of hub airports, you can see that the average is $7 to $8. So this can actually be an effective tool as we try to recruit air service because we show the airlines that we're still keeping our costs low for them. This is an example of the route map. I try to show this every year. It shows that we have 23 daily nonstop destinations. This actually includes 3 seasonal destinations that Allegiant is serving to Orlando Sanford that they've been doing for some time. They've started service to Las Vegas, biweekly service, and then last week started service to Destin, Florida. You can see here that we go to the east and west coast. We've got good service to most of the major connecting hubs in the country. To talk a little bit about what's happened over the last year with regard to air service, the new carrier, Alaska Airlines, started in July of 2015, and that service has just been doing great. I'm hoping they'll upgrade that aircraft or bring in a second flight sometime soon. It's a little bit historical, and it was the first time we had an inaugural flight go out with new air service that went out completely full. I talked about Allegiant a moment ago. United Airlines, if you've ever taken the 50-seat regional jet to Newark, you'll be glad to know that they've upgraded that to a 70-seat Embraer 175, which has first-class service. And we're always working hard in our efforts to secure nonstop flights to Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport and New York's LaGuardia Airport. In this, related to the air service issue, we track the percentage of airlines that have increased or improved performance. Now, this isn't something that we really do. It's something that the airlines do, but we've got a pretty assertive target 30%. In your budget book, the actual was 17%. I can report to you in March of this year, it's closer to 50%. There are several ways that an air carrier can increase service. They can upgauge the aircraft, such as the United Airlines Newark example that I mentioned a moment ago. They can increase the frequency or the number of flights per day to a destination. We can add a new destination, or a new carrier can actually enter the market. Our last issue deals with the amount of available land that we have for development, some of the maintenance issues that we have, maintaining vacant facilities and trying to get them leased. And we always have the growing cost of maintaining our existing infrastructure. Not dealing with this issue could prevent the Airport Trust from sustaining revenue sources and actually prevent the city from the economic benefits of more jobs and higher sales tax revenues. Here you see the picture of the South Portland Avenue realignment. I remind you this is taking the existing 2-lane asphalt Portland and going to a 4-lane curb and gutter, Esplanade lighting, landscaping, and irrigation. We want to continue in our strategy to implement our land use development. As I mentioned, we're still working hard to develop Portland Avenue, and we have other improvements on the east side, water and wastewater and roadway improvements to provide access to airside parcels for future tenants. In our building maintenance line of business related to this issue, we track the percentage of operating hours where major mechanical systems are functioning, doing well there, above our target of 95%. These are the creature comforts and the systems that are very critical to tenants and travelers. These are our HVAC, our passenger loading bridges, our baggage systems, and so forth. We also track the percentage of vehicles and equipment available for use. We're doing well there. But it's important that we track this because we want to make sure that preventative maintenance is being done on all the vehicles that we use. We want to make sure that critical operations such as our parking shuttles for our parking operation and our ice and snow equipment, all of those types of things are ready to use when we need them. I want to talk about a few of the upcoming projects that, again, illustrate our commitment to improve the airport environment. We are going to be installing in the next year or so a new parking and revenue control system that will support our public parking operation. This is going to be about a $4 million cost. This will replace the system that we have today, which is out of date. It can't be supported by parts or service agreements any longer. We'll be replacing all of the infrastructure, such as the ticket dispensers that you see here. It'll provide us better revenue tracking, revenue control. It'll also offer some amenities, such as pay-on-foot kiosk, and we'll be able to install level-by-level or space-by-space counts in the parking garages. A few months ago, the Airport Trust approved a concept for overhauling all of the airport signage. This will be about a $5 million project. We're a little more than halfway through design with the first phase of this, which will redo all of the signage on the airport roadways and also in the parking garages. We do have the terminal signage, which is scheduled to be upgraded as well, and we anticipate doing that when we do the terminal expansion. We have 39 elevators, escalators, or moving walkways, and these are punished 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's not like a shopping mall or an office escalator. It's amazing the things that people drop, bag tags, transfer tags, roller plastic wheels, the things that get caught in these. And we are reviewing a report now so that we can come into a prioritization program. We're going to budget about $400,000 a year and start prioritizing repairs on the ones that need the most work.
Mark, are you going to work on the one that's in the little, when you come out of the parking garage,
Yes.
the little, they're so tiny.
That's called Station 2, is what we refer to. And yes, we have a separate report that actually I received preliminary report this week on Station 2. It's problematic in that, as you say, the escalator is very narrow. It's only 24 inches wide. It doesn't handle the size of today's carry-ons, and it's difficult for a lot of people to manage. We'll most likely be taking that escalator out and putting in a brand-new elevator. We actually have 2 elevators there at that location now, so we'll have 3 elevators, and so that'll be a big help.
I think that makes a lot of sense. It's down constantly, and it does not accommodate.
I mentioned Wiley Post Airport's going through almost a complete overhaul of the airfield. We'll have 8 airfield improvements for phase 2 and 3. I won't get too detailed on them. One project's going to be $5.8 million. The other's anticipated to be about $4.1 million. And this is to do the work on Phase 2 that we're underway with now to rehabilitate the main runway and also do continued improvements with airfield lighting, signage, and pavement work. Our proposed cash fund budget, again, is the department's operating account, and this is organized by our line of business. The total is $17,602,000. We have 118 positions assigned. We're not asking for any new positions this year, and we didn't ask for any positions last year. Just some minor changes in cash fund budget changes, insurance, benefit, and salary increase, and then a slight increase in city-provided services. And that's my budget for you this morning, and a brief overview, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, Mark?
You mentioned itinerant flights and takeoffs, and I think you said there's an increase in that business. Do we have adequate facilities for the future if that business increases, such as runways, maintenance facilities, service facilities, et cetera?
We do have adequate capacity for pavements at both Will Rogers and Wiley Post and Clarence C. Page Airport.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that came to mind was, we used to have a lot of those flights going to downtown Air Park, and that's no longer there. And I was just wondering for the future if we have adequate runway space.
We do. Our challenge at Wiley Post Airport actually is because we're getting more larger aircraft into Wiley Post. It can handle, business aircraft today are huge. A business aircraft today is a Boeing 737 in some respects. Now, that couldn't go into Wiley Post, but everything less than that could. But our challenge now is to make sure that we work towards, when we do improvements on our runways and taxiways, that we take the opportunity to try to strengthen them for the higher load limits that larger aircraft will bring.
The other question I had is, as far as parking spaces at the airport, with the move of the rental car agencies, did that provide us with more parking spaces?
Yes, we've already given the public parking operation about 100 more spaces. Several years ago, the ready return spaces in the bottom of the two-story was only 300 spaces, and I gave up 100 more spaces in the public parking for Garage B, the original 5-story garage, so that the rental car ready returns could be increased to 400 spaces. Now that they've relocated to the new rental car center, we've captured that. We have not yet opened up the two-story underground because we have a project that hopefully we will bid at this month's trust to do a joint seal and a control joint project on the upper level, which is the short-term parking. So we'll probably be shifting all of that parking over into one side of that garage and then doing the upper and lower halves remodeling and then switching them over to the other side before we can repurpose that lower level. Okay. But we will eventually be opening that back up to the public.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Market area that we've talked about a lot is the concourse from the parking garages into the airport, and you've done a fantastic job upgrading that, lighting, paint.
Thank you.
Made a big difference.
We're receiving lots of comments on that. It was very drab.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Mark?
Yes, sir.
You've heard me talk before about the Will Rogers statue that's out front, and the concept of with the way that we funnel passengers into the airport, hardly anyone sees it.
Yes.
Has there been any talk about moving that inside or moving it to another more highly trafficked location?
We haven't. We can explore that. There's even less people now seeing that now that the rental cars are out from under the two-story. So we can look at that.
Okay. I remember I was there at the ribbon cutting, and then I kind of forgot about it for a decade. And then I remembered that we had it and went to find it. But it's a beautiful piece, and it just seems like we ought to put it in a position that more people could see it. I can imagine that's not an easy thing to move. It's a giant piece of art.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll look into that, though. Thank you.
Mark, thanks.
You bet.
That completes our presentations for this morning.
All right. Well, during the Finance Committee, reconvene the council meeting. We have comments from council. James?
I have a request. If we could have a conversation, it can be a brief conversation about salaries for council and mayor, and maybe we look at so many different peer cities when we're trying to figure out salaries for other positions. I wonder, Jim, if we can just figure out what the peer, and I have no idea, $12,000 for council, can't imagine there's too many that are $24,000 for mayor. Maybe council, I have no idea. I'm just asking if we can do a peer comparison.
Sure.
The last time we changed it was coming up on 17 years ago, and that would require a vote of the people, but I'm just wondering where we are compared to other cities. Thanks.
Larry?
Just like to pass on some accolades of praise for the folks in West 10. This past Saturday, they had their first auto show at the corner of Rockwell and Northwest 10th. When I was out there around noontime, they'd already had 38 very expensive, fancy vehicles on display out there. Their goal was to make this a destination point for people to come into the West 10 area and do business and to recreate and fellowship together. So it's a first step forward, and my hat's off to the West 10 people for taking that on and for getting an excellent start on the revitalization from the business side of the West 10 corridor. Thank you, Your Honor.
David? Meg?
Just a quick one, Mayor. I really wanted to thank the fire department and the police last night dealing with a pretty significant fire down in the Farmers Market area. The Betty's Produce building sustained an awful lot of damage, and I was going to hope to catch Bob, but I really would like to ask if code enforcement could go out and take a look at it. This is either the second time in 3 years or the third time in 5 years that building has had a fire, and it sits in the middle of a lot of other historic properties and could be perceived as being a danger. So I think we need to take a look at that. There was so much going on in downtown Oklahoma City this weekend, I can't even talk about it, but congratulations to the Pro-Am gang, 3 great bike races in 3 different districts, Midtown, Film Row, and Automobile Alley. The Y had an outdoor Y Without Walls. Goodwill had their Peace, Love, and Goodwill in Myriad Gardens. There were thousands of people there from 11 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night. It was just amazing. And Pleasant 1010 neighborhood had their community get-together. And it also went through the evening with an outdoor screening of Little Rascals for the kids on Saturday night. And it was all just a huge success. So we've got neighborhoods doing things everywhere.
All right, John? Mark?
Just briefly, this Friday, June 10th, Bluff Creek Park, we'll have the ribbon cutting for the new conservation garden. If you don't know much about this, the gardens are at 4 different places in Oklahoma City, and they are plants for your own landscaping at your own home, and they're conservation friendly. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for people to come out and see the park. It's 10 a.m. Friday, June 10th, Bluff Creek Park, 4551 West Hefner Road. And the following week, on June 17th at the park, there'll be a picnic and plant talk program where you can learn about the plants that are in the park, so you can decide if you want to put some of those conservation-friendly plants in your own backyard.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. City manager reports?
Nothing this morning.
All right. Citizens to be heard? All right, that'll do it. Thanks, everybody. We're adjourned.